Hello again everyone, Yom Tov, and welcome to your real crime stories. This week, the suggestion for, I'll start that again. The person who suggested the topic for tonight's real crime story is one of our newer haveners. Her name is Nona. She has a channel called My So-Called Life 1977, where she does makeup and makeup reviews and things like that. She's a great friend of Angie's and another lady called Laura. Laura's in New Zealand and Nona is in America. I'm not quite sure what state, but anyway, she's one of our newer haveners. So give her a massive welcome to Nona. And Nona suggested that I look into what she named the WM3. And of course, I didn't know what that was. So I asked her, and she said it was the West Memphis 3. But I was still none the wiser. So she gave me a little bit of background. So I went and I Googled the West Memphis 3. And not only were 3 little boys murdered, the guys that the authorities chose to sort of, what can I say, hung, drawn, quarter was a miscarriage of justice. And they had to do something called the Alford Law, which means although they were innocent, they could still be charged with a crime that makes them look guilty or something like that. I know it's in the story that I'm going to keep relating to, but I'm sorry, I just don't understand these things. If you're innocent, then you're innocent. How can you be innocent and yet still have committed a crime that makes you guilty? I just don't understand that. But anyway, I'll tell you what I know, and the way that I handle the real crime stories is we are all sitting around my kitchen table. All of us are just milling about my home and we're just generally chatting. You've got the coffee pot on, we've got sandwiches, we've got cakes, cigarettes if anybody wants one, and glasses of wine if anybody fancies that instead. And we all just sit talking, and then somebody says to me, "Hey, have you heard about the West Memphis 3? And I say, "No." And then somebody talks about it, or I would say, "Can I tell you all about the West Memphis 3 and what I've learned?" And then you guys come back in the comments and tell me what you think. Because I'm not a journalist. I don't read from a script. You know, if I do read anything, it's from the laptop. And you know that's where I get my information from. You know, Google is your friend. Certainly is my friend. So that's what I do. If I can't remember stuff, then I read it to you from the internet. And that's what I'm going to do tonight. Well, from what I can remember, this happened in West Memphis, in Arkansas, on May 5th, 1993. And 3 Cub Scouts, they were all third graders, I believe. I'll have to double check that. Oh, sorry, second graders. They were all second graders. They were all 8 years old, and all three of them were Cub Scouts. And they went missing. And they were all best friends. Stephen Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers. I think it's Stephen and Michael were best friends, but Christopher would have been a close friend as well, I would imagine. And the most important thing about this case is that we must never ever forget the victims, because they are the most important ones. The victims, they've been robbed of their lives. There would have been, 33 now? Or, no, 35? Be 35? Or 25? I'm sorry, I can't count. But anyway, they would have been in their late 20s, early 30s. And unfortunately for their families, they're no longer here. But I'll go into the story that I know. Well, on the May 5th, they went missing. And on May 6th, they were found. Their bodies were found in a drainage ditch in a place called Robin Hood Hills. They were all naked. They'd all been hog-tied with their own shoelaces. And Christopher had been mutilated. And I can't bring myself to say that part that makes him a boy. That was mutilated. And then a month later, 3 teenagers were arrested. Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly Jr. They were charged with murdering the boys. Apparently they were convicted under what's called very, very questionable circumstances. And the thing is, they were eventually released from prison, but they had to undergo 18 years in prison. I'll tell you the bits that I know. They became known as the West Memphis Three. Now, all 3 of them, now that they're out of prison, have all said that if it wasn't for the fact that the media had taken an interest in their case, and the fact that Hollywood celebrities had taken up their cause, they do believe that they would have ended up being killed in prison. Because, prisoners, it's weird, isn't it? Criminals have their own code of honour. And paedophiles, child murderers, they've got to be kept segregated from the rest of the prison population, because if they weren't, they would end up dead very, very quickly. Because the majority of criminals will tell you that there are certain crimes you just don't commit, and child murder is one of them. You know, they hold child killing and paedophilia. It's more or less 50-50 to them. One is just as bad as the other. And to them, you know, there are fates worse than death, and they would be the ones to inflict it. Because the majority of them are like, well, they're not even necessarily have to be family men, do they? It's just the fact that the crime is so evil and reprehensible that, yes, even though they themselves are criminals and in prison for crimes, they would not stoop so low as to commit crimes like that. So, like I said, they have their own code of conduct and their own code of honour. Anyway, there was this guy called Bob Ruff. He was a fire chief, and he became the host of an investigative podcast called Truth and Justice. Well, he took a great interest in the West Memphis Three, and he decided that he was going to investigate the case, actively go out looking for evidence, so that, you know, he could give real-time updates. He could tell his listeners what he'd done, exactly what had happened, who he'd spoken to, and things like that. And he said that a big part of the reason why this case is now going on 27 years unsolved, a proper investigation should be victim-centred. What I wanted to do was go back to the beginning, back to the victims, and give them a voice, give them justice, and do a proper evidence-based investigation that starts where it should have begun, which is with the victims. And he's absolutely true. He's right. So he goes back, he puts the attention back on Stephen, Michael and Christopher. So there was a 1996 documentary made about the crime called Paradise Lost, The Child Murders at Robin Hills, was a definitive account of the killings. And there was 2 more films that followed, Paradise Lost 2, Revelations, and that was made in 2000, and Paradise Lost 3, Purgatory, in 2011. And it was called that because of the treatment of the defendants. Now, when this case went to court, it actually resulted in the fact that the 3 youths I mentioned, one of them was called Jesse Miss Kelly Jr., and there was the other one called Jason Baldwin. They were given life sentences, apparently life sentences plus 40 years. But Damien Eccles got the death penalty, and that meant he was facing lethal injection. So, but all the time they were saying, we are innocent. Now apparently, because Damien Eccles was like the local town bad boy, a juvenile parole officer said, oh, it looks like Damien Eccles has finally gone and killed someone. So they sort of half expected him to do this sort of thing anyway, because he hadn't kept on the right side of the law. He was a high school dropout with an arrest record for petty crimes like vandalism and shoplifting. And he'd spent time in an institution for mental health issues. Now, that obviously made the police aware of him. But he was classed as a weirdo. Oh, good. We've got some pretty noisy neighbours yet again. He was classed as a weirdo because he liked to wear black all the time. He was interested in Wicca as the religion, witchcraft. Apparently when he was a lot younger, he wanted to be a priest. He wanted to be a Catholic priest. But he turned to Wicca. And he was also classed as listening to devil music because his favourite band was Metallica. So, the people who went to church, as far as they were concerned, he was a lost cause because he was listening to, they thought Metallica was of the devil, and anybody who listened to it was, just about one of Satan's children, really. Now, I don't know, as an aside, I don't know what that makes me, because I love Metallica, and I have done for years and years and years, and I've also loved Motorhead and AC/DC, and they've all been classed as satanic music, as has Black Sabbath, who I also like, and of course, the king and devil of them all, Ozzy Osbourne, and Alice Cooper, while we're there. I like them. Him. So, if I'd been there at the time, they would have had me cast out as one of Satan's children. So, anyway, there were, there were other suspects, including 2 other local teenagers who were questioned, one of whom used to drive an ice cream truck around the town, and he was very familiar with the kids. But keeping in mind that I think the police at the time and the judiciary, I think, were influenced by Charles Manson and the Manson family and what they'd done to Sharon Tate. I think they looked particularly at Damien Eccles in the same light as another Charles Manson. So that's what happened there. I mean, it was terrible. He had a book with a pentagram on it because of his interest in Wicca. So that marked him down. He also had a pregnant girlfriend called Dominica, who gave birth to their son when he was in jail. When the police first questioned him on the 7th of May, he denied having anything to do with the murders and was given a polygraph test. Police would talk to him multiple times over the ensuing month, more than any other suspect. The defence attorneys would call it the satanic panic when the case went to trial, because they said that because Damien was different from the town church-going types, they'd already condemned him. They'd already judged him and found him wanting. And they didn't want somebody like him because he just didn't fit in. So he'd obviously done it. Apparently, when Jesse Miss Kelly was taken in for questioning, the police talked to him for over 12 hours without his parents being in the room. which they shouldn't have done because he was a minor and he only had an IQ of 72, which would lead to questions about his ability to fully process what was happening. Now, less than an hour of the interrogation was recorded in total. But on the recording, he told police that he watched his friends beat two of the boys, and then that he helped subdue one of them when he tried to get away. There was a lot more to it than that, but I hope you don't mind. I'm not going to go into that. But then he said, no, none of that's true. I was actually at a wrestling match in another town when these boys went missing. But, you know, the damage was done. So he sort of told the police a tall tale, thinking he was trying to be funny. But the police had what they wanted. As far as they were concerned, I think that's it, we've got a confession. So they had him banged to rights. Damien Eccles and is it Stephen Baldwin? Is that his name? Just want to check I've got the right name. No, sorry, Jason Baldwin. They were hiding out in Damien's apartment, and when the police came knocking on the door, they hid in the bedroom, hoping that the police would go away, but the police refused to go away, broke in and arrested the pair of them. Now, apparently, I think it was Jesse's attorney successfully argued for a change of venue to a courthouse about 110 miles away, and argued that the confession that Jesse gave to police was a fake story told out of fear and panic. But Jesse Miskelly was convicted on 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder on February the 5th, 1994. He was spared the death penalty when the jury rejected capital murder charges. A judge sentenced him to the maximum penalty, life in prison plus 40 years. Eccles and Baldwin were tried together, and each was convicted of 3 counts of capital murder. While Baldwin was sentenced to life in prison without parole, Eccles was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Asked by the judge if there was a reason the sentence shouldn't be handed down, Baldwin replied, "Because I'm innocent." When Damien Eccles was asked the same question, he just replied, "No, sir." Because I think he must have thought, I'm done for. You know? And his execution date was set for the 5th of May, 1994. I think they chose that date deliberately because that was the date that the boys had gone missing. Obviously, that was the day that they were murdered. So that's probably why it was probably a case of a tooth for a tooth, you know. That's just my opinion, though. But obviously there's got to be an appeal and then ultimate appeals, and that the things, they can be on death row for years before anything would actually happen. So the families, although they were heartbroken over the deaths of their children, felt that justice had been served. So it was a case of they got closure so they could move on. But that wasn't going to be the case, because the convictions were only the beginning of the 15-year-long saga that would result in the 3 men being released from prison in 2011. This was brought on by the potentially coerced confession, accusations of jury misconduct, the fact that the young men were convicted without any physical evidence other than a few fibres that couldn't be ruled out as belonging to other people linking the suspects to the crime scene. Then a knife found by divers in a lake behind Jason Baldwin's house couldn't be definitively linked to them. The defence team started poking more holes, starting with objections to how evidence was collected, how long it took police to get the county coroner on the scene, the handling of the blood samples, and what happened to be shoddy record keeping. Bite marks on the victims didn't match dental impressions from any of the 3 young men. And they submitted these after they were convicted, but the dental impressions didn't match what was on the bodies of the boys. But they still went ahead and convicted them. The Alabama Supreme Court rejected Jesse Miskelly's motion for a new trial, deciding that his confession was validly obtained. But the case has already become a literally cause célèbre, with people like Eddie Vedder, Johnny Depp, Peter Jackson, who, is a famous director, and Natalie Maines, invested in the ongoing defence work being done for the trio, who had become known as the West Memphis 3. They became pop culture icons, especially Damien Eccles, who was on death row and was the one who had the most to say about why he felt that he and his friends had been scapegoated. And he released a memoir from prison in 2005 called Almost Home, My Life Story, Volume 1. Tribute albums were recorded. Free the West Memphis 3 by Eddie Vedder, Joe Strummer, the Guns N' Roses drummer Duff McKagan, and Soundgarden bassist Ben Shepherd. And they all held fundraisers. And then in 2007, the defence teams presented new forensic evidence, and when DNA tests couldn't place the convicted young men at the scene, prosecutors were open to negotiating. So on August the 19th, 2011, Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin and Jesse Miskelly entered, now this is the thing, the Alford plea. A plea of innocence while acknowledging that there's evidence to convict them in a court of law. And after spending more than 18 years in prison, they were sentenced to time served plus 10 years suspended. They were free in time for the New York Film Festival premiere of Paradise Lost Free, Purgatory. This is something that I don't understand, that maybe you might be able to help me understand. This Alford plea, a plea of innocence while acknowledging that there's evidence to convict them in a court of law. So, even though they didn't do this crime, and they were innocent, there's evidence that would still convict them. So why haven't they used that evidence? If the judiciary and if the police have evidence that says they did it, they definitely did it, then why haven't they been rearrested? and sent back to prison. That's what I don't understand. Maybe it's just me being dumb, but I just don't understand it. I don't get it. A plea of innocence while acknowledging that there's evidence to convict them in a court of law. I'm sorry, I don't understand that. You know, I thought you were either innocent or you were guilty. And in this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. You know, you're not guilty until you're proved innocent. It's the other way around. You are innocent until it's proven otherwise. And I'm very, very glad it is. Because, you know, the judge, you know, the law should be fair and just. Anyway, they've gone on to live their own lives now. Damien Eccles has ended up living in New York. Jessie Miss Kelly returned home to West Memphis just to live a private life. And Jason Baldwin got his GED, and then he went on to get his law associate degree. And in 2017 he moved to Texas, where he co-founded Proclaim Justice, a non-profit dedicated to overturning wrongful convictions. And he's living in Austin in Texas now. He wrote a book in 2013 called Life After Death, and he described the mistreatment he suffered in prison and the unflagging support and resources of the three of them received from the Hollywood community. They said people like Johnny Depp, Henry Rollins, and Margaret Cho, and other people from Hollywood formed a chain that helped, like, to pay for the DNA testing. And, you know, if they hadn't done that, he knows they would have ended up being killed in prison. So, you know, and the documentary that was done by Bob Ruff, he was working on that. He said the documentary saved his life, saved Damien's life, and saved Jessie's life. He said, the state of Arkansas was hoping to do like they do in so many other cases with poor people, with people who are powerless to defend themselves. They wanted to overwhelm us, convict us, condemn us, and sweep us under the rug, and no one would be the wiser. This is just Jason Baldwin talking. So now, unfortunately, those three little boys, their families must have thought they had closure, and of course now they don't. So Bob Ruff is still working. He's still going over everything with a tooth comb, all of the evidence, everything that's connected with this case. And he says that they are very, very close to, what's he says? He said, our investigation through the TV series moves the ball down the field in the investigation further than it's ever gone. And it has us positioned to where I believe we can finally solve this case now. So if you've watched or listened to anything by Bob Ruff on his podcast, he said when our series ends, the conversation about the West Memphis 3 case is going to be completely different moving forward. So And I think that was called the Forgotten West Memphis 3. So that was your true crime for tonight. And like all crimes against children, it's awful. And I'm always left feeling sad because it always comes back to the victims. And it's just awful. So yeah, and I do apologise. I'm wearing the same top as I wore in the folk tales today, but considering that it was a day late, and I filmed this straight after filming that one, so I hope you can forgive me for turning up in the same apparel in 2 videos, but I just wanted to get them out and done so that you weren't, missing out on anything. So I hope you can overlook it this time. Well, I can never ask you if you've enjoyed this, because I mean, 3 little boys lost their lives. 3 young men lost their youth. At least one of them didn't lose his life, thank goodness. And it makes you wonder, just because you live an alternative lifestyle, that doesn't make you evil. But the town had decided that Damien Eccles was evil because he wore black, he was into Wicca, and he listened to Metallica. That's incredibly small-minded. But that's just my opinion. It's just, I'm open to just about anything within reason, because there for the grace of God go I. Who am I to judge somebody else's lifestyle? I mean, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, particularly children, or those who can't defend themselves. And I wouldn't support anybody that went out to hurt somebody else's mental health. Could never support that. But that's just that, guys. So anyway, thank you again for being here, and thank you for listening to another of your real life crime stories. I will be back next week with another one. If any of you have any suggestions of a case that you'd like me to cover, please let me know in the comments and I'll sort that out for you. I'd like to thank Nona again for suggesting the case for this week. So I hope, Nona, that I've done it justice, but I've done it in my own particular way. Like I said, I'm no journalist. We're just talking around my kitchen table. That's that. So on that happy note, guys, I will see you again very, very soon. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. Look after each other. And wherever you happen to be in the world, just live your best life. You know, and I'm going to adopt that. I think we should all live our best lives. Because in this day and age, why the hell not? Just live your best life. You know, as long as you're not hurting anybody, just you do what makes you happy. I'm going to say bye-bye to you for now. I'll see you again very, very soon. And I love you all. Bye-bye for now. Bye.